Hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jack Dutiel. I'm a life member of both AUSA and USAWOA, the United States Army Warrant Officers Association, where I serve as National Executive Director. I also serve as the editor of USAWOA's Newsliner magazine. And if you're a regular reader of the Newsliner, you know I have repeatedly opined that there just has never been a more cohesive, unified senior warrant officer team in the history of the Army across all three components, and I hope everybody agrees. Absolutely. And today I have the pleasure of talking with the top three leaders on that team. CW5 Yolandria Dixon Carter, the Senior Warrant Officer Advisor to the Chief of Staff of the Army. CW5 Teresa Domeyer, the Command Chief Warrant Officer for the Army National Guard. And CW5 Hal Griffin, the Command Chief Warrant Officer of America's Army Reserve. So why don't we just jump right into the questions? Okay, how do you feel about that? Okay.
Do it.
So the Army Talent Management Task Force, led by Major General Joseph P. McGee, will revolutionize personnel management across the Army. CW5 Dixon Carter, at next week's USAWOA annual meeting, we will be honored to welcome Major General McGee as the leader of our talent management panel, on which you will be a key member. A huge piece of talent management in our cohort will involve recommended changes to Warrant Officer Professional Military Education, PME, and policy. And our mutual friend, Combined Arms Center CCWO, CW5 Steve Kilgore, caused a bit of a stir with a recent article sharing ideas on these subjects. Can you give us an update of where we are in this process, what folks can expect next week at the meeting when CW5 Kilgore and others join you and General McGee on this panel discussion?
Absolutely, sir. First, I want to thank you all for having us here today to have this discussion. I really appreciate it. And then I have to say thanks to Mr. Steve Kilgore, who is our Combined Arms Center CCWO, for leading the charge on our PME changes to our professional military education. He is doing a phenomenal job. So although he has caused a bit of stir with the article, he is doing a phenomenal job in leading the change. He's taken what Army senior leaders are asking for us to do as a cohort, as a total cohort. He has been speaking with both Teresa and Hal on it. And so, but the article were just his views on how he believes that PME should be changed. PME is, it is a proposal. It is not in the planning phase, I should say. It is a proposal, and what we're trying to do as a cohort is we're trying to align our PME with our KSBs, knowledge, skills, and behaviors, so that we can be better war fighters and that we can be better technicians and combat experts, if you will, no matter where we are assigned, no matter what position we're seated in, and no matter what the Army requirements are, whether they be today or 2025, 28, and beyond. So we're trying to align our PME so that our knowledge, skills, and behaviors are aligned with our PME. Again, the article that was published out there, and he did put a disclaimer that these are the opinions of the author and not those of the Department of the Army. And Teresa and Hal can elaborate a little bit more, expand on it a little bit more, but we just recently had a meeting in which Teresa actually brought us all together to have a discussion in reference to PME and the proposal to include the Warrant Officer College. And so there, we all got together, we all talked through some things. We talked through things that caused a stir, that had some friction points. We came to an agreement. We can disagree on some things, but we can also disagree to a point where we can compromise on things to make our cohort a better cohort. So, and then, like I said, Teresa or Hal can expand on those.
So Steve was good enough to meet with 5 of my senior warrant officers of the 54 and wanted to explain. So we met at Fort Leavenworth, and he went through a slide presentation, lasted the whole day. And Steve is very passionate about it, and I am too. And we want to do the right thing for the cohort and for our future leaders. And so by bringing Colonel Nelson into it this last week really helped. And he discussed it during our Warrant Officer Senior Advisory Council on Friday. And so I had even more CCWOs from the 54 involved. And now they're understanding it. But Steve is so passionate about it because he wants to do the right thing. But bringing us together as a team has really, really helped. And then we can, brainstorm on what is best for our future, because it's not about us anymore.
Right.
It's about our future warrant officers that are going to lead in the future.
Well, and I think probably just to chime in a little bit, when someone like Mr. Kilgore, who's, spent a career serving in the regular Army, comes up with an idea, it can be the best idea in the world, but he needs to chat with his reserve component counterparts to make sure that this is really, that the way it pans out is good for the total force. Hal, do you have any comments or
absolutely.
observations?
Well, I want to echo Chief Dixon Carter, and thanks so much to our great Army Association, Warrant Officer Association for partnering to help get the message out to the entire Army. This is a big deal, and as you and I were talking the other day, I know Don Hess would be so proud today to see how well that we collaborate. And what Don was worried about 30 years ago was, 40 years ago, was the professionalization of the warrant officer cohort. And so look at us today with our institution that we have a guide on and a charter that's long lasting to make sure, as Chief, as you put out, is to make sure that the knowledge, skills, behaviors, whatever they're required to be, and they will evolve as we evolve as an Army to meet the threat, that we have to be in front of decision points by making sure there's that dialogue and that feedback. And so I was on the line, with Teresa and Steve Kilgore and the rest, and several months ago he shared, his initial concept with us, and what we did in Army Reserve is I circulated that to all of my CW5s and to garner the feedback. And we already had initial feedback, which I provided to Steve. And what we're going to do next is appoint warrant officer MOS champions so that the COEs, where the real brain trust is in working the dot mill PFP solutions to those KSBs, and that's an ongoing challenge, that we make sure that we provide the right data and analysis and input so that they can make good informed decisions down there at the COEs, so that way before it gets up there to the CAT commander, they know what's going on and they have the appropriate input from us. And that's the challenge ongoing as we move forward.
So important, so important. And for those of you watching, Hal referred originally to Don Hess. Don Hess was the founder of the USA WOA, and he founded it specifically because warrant officers really had no professional development of any kind back in the early 70s when he founded the association. And you are absolutely right.
Yep.
If he took a look at the three of you and all of the other magnificent warrant officer leaders that we have in today's Army, he is looking at us from heaven, and he is swollen with pride, I guarantee you. And to just kind of not really shift too much, warrant officer overall strength in recruiting has also been a perennial issue for as long as I can remember, and particularly in the Guard and the Reserve. Hal and Teresa, maybe you can fill us in on recent initiatives to get after that issue, such as the WOCS pilot program that you recently worked on together.
The accelerated course that we had met 9 months ago or a year ago trying to discuss it, because the Army Reserves had so many COEs, not COEs, but your candidates that were ready to go to school. And so we wanted an accelerated course at Fort McClellan. Well, then COVID hit us.
Yeah.
And so dealing with the pandemic and trying to schedule a course was very, very challenging, and we had to keep moving it and keep moving it. And with Colonel Nelson partnering up with us, we were able to keep moving it, do ETPs, an exceptional policy for our candidate schools that were being held in phase 1 at all the RTIs. We were not able to send, we weren't going to be able to send them all to McClellan if it kept pushing to the right. Yeah. And so Hal and I kept teaming up saying, you know, we still want to do this, but then we kept thinking, ooh, Fort McClellan in July, you know, because Alabama's a little warm there. And so we were like, okay. And so Colonel Nelson did an amazing job by doing the exception policies and letting our phase 1 sites conduct phase 2. But we still had 50 more come in to McClellan. Sure. So I'll let Hal, because I know he gets excited when he talks about the accelerated course.
No lie, this is one of the biggest initiatives during my tenure over the past couple of 2.5 years. But what the real success story here is, this is total force partnership, because this could never have happened first with our commandant approving and Colonel Hines before Colonel Nelson did a handoff. Yep. But all the Army staff that had to agree, and all of our CW5 counterparts, Jeff Jagars at TRADOC, Bob Davis at DAMO TR in the Pentagon G37, who works for General Costanza, who ultimately had to sign and approve this course to conduct. And that was, you know, over a year ago. And the staffing of this had to, in the whole genesis of it, started by warrant officers talking to each other. Yep. So there's great power in having strong relationships. Mm-hmm. And then from those relationships, you're just noodling on and talking over problems. And the problem that we're getting after for Army Reserve, probably similar to National Guard, but for us, look as far back as you want. We've always been at a certain plateau in terms of on-hand strength versus authorizations. And within that window, go back as many years as you want, we sort of stay there. And so it's like one of my bosses, General Carroll, used to like to say, if you keep doing the same things over and over again, nothing ever changes. Mm-hmm. So what we are expected to be as warrant officers is thought leaders. And to be thought leaders, you got to kind of step outside yourself for a minute, look at the problems of your organization, and help solve them. And so that was the genesis of this, is how can I solve my Army Reserve, you know, backlog of candidates looking for WOCS seats. And this was a solution. And then, of course, warrant officers have to go to our bosses, and we have to ask permission, and we have to have a darn good, strong, solid case. And that can't happen unless there's consensus among us first. And so there was a lot of conversations. I mean, I like to jokingly say I had my skin removed multiple times trying to justify and defend this through Army staffing, get an MOA between the National Guard Bureau, and Teresa was right there watching it as it evolved. And so it's huge success story. Historic number of W1s created for America's Army Reserve this year. And we demonstrated a capability of a 7-day-a-week WOCS that now is back in the system. It used to be there up through 2008.
You haven't seen that for 25 years, I don't think.
Well, 2008, the regular Army stopped doing it.
Yes.
As a resource-based situation. But the capability is back on the shelf again. And we just revalidated that. Couldn't do it without, it's again, total force partnership. The approvals, the buy-ins from regular Army side, the executors who did it, who did not hardly gain any readiness from physically doing it, other than to create and validate a capability which has the potential to help everybody's readiness and grow the force in the future. So that's one example of warrant officers being thought leaders. And I think that's where the real success is.
Well, and I think it's, the whole partnering and working together to come up with solutions that help our entire cohort. And that's what I really think defines this current senior warrant officer leader team, folks. Cool. It really does. You had something to add?
So with Camp Atterbury doing their phase 2, still with dealing with the pandemic, we had to do accelerated phase 1 for the states. We had 32 states feeding in to Camp Atterbury, and we just went to their graduation this past weekend. And I'm sure Miss Dixon Carter is going to talk about it, because we actually graduated 209 candidates.
Wow.
189 Army National Guard and 20 Army Reserve.
Fantastic.
And this is the largest in history
That's right.
that the Army National Guard with WOCS has ever graduated. And it was outdoors. The reception was outdoors on Friday. It was outdoors on Saturday. And it was an amazing ceremony. And Yolandria actually was the guest speaker on Friday and did an amazing job. The candidates loved her, and now warrant officers. And then General Lyles, the tag of Indiana, he did an amazing speech on Saturday too, except when he kind of talked about my Huskers that maybe we'll have a winning season this year. But it was really, really a good experience for all of us.
It was, and I got to tell you, I don't think we can message this enough, is the fact that it takes a total Army. And when I say total Army, I don't mean just those that are serving in uniform, just those that are active component, Army National Guard or Army Reserves. I'm talking about our families, our veterans and our retirees, our Soldier for Life population. And you saw that out there this weekend, this past weekend. You saw the total Army that came together, and it was a flawlessly executed weekend. It was a flawlessly executed the phase 2. Everybody, I mean, I was speechless for a moment or so, because it was exceptionally done. But more importantly to me, I said for every session that I had the opportunity to be a part of, when you walked into the room, you felt the cohesiveness. You felt that. You felt like, you know, SMA is always talking about, Tim's, this is my squad, right? And it's not just the infantryman or soldier squad. It's, this is my squad. This panel is my squad. You can have multiple squads. And for me, when I went out there and I walked into each session, I felt like I was a member of a squad. And I had never met some of the folks, right? And that's what it's really about. It's feeling like you are a part of a team, you know, and it was just 209 candidates that walked across the field in a COVID environment, and it was flawlessly executed to the point where we are now looking, as we were talking, looking across and saying, maybe this is something that we can do, you know, for the future, not just in a pandemic, you know, environment, but for the future and how it was executed. But it takes a total Army to do that.
It does, and I'll tell you, to your last point, there are probably a lot of things that we're going to learn in this pandemic that has forced us to do things a little differently of necessity, that we're going to incorporate into being even more effective moving forward.
Yes, sir.
Yolandria, I have also recently heard about some possible targeted direct commissioning initiatives. Can you fill us in on these and how they might be implemented? Because I'm getting a little chatter at the association on this.
I feel like I get all the friction questions, but I've got my battle buddies left and right of me here to help. But so again, CW5 Rick Knowlton, who is our warrant officer, our senior warrant officer on the talent management task force team, who is again another warrant officer who's doing great things and making a difference. So there was recently some information that was put out in reference to a pilot initiative that we're doing for direct commissioning for, we had 2 of our branches, Special Forces and our Air Defense. It's now just focusing on Special Forces. And so the message, there was a little disconnect, but what the initiative is, it's a pilot, it is a pilot, and the Special Forces population, what they're gonna do is for E7s, E8s, and E9s who are selected to become warrant officers, they will, once they successfully complete warrant officer candidate school and their basic course, they will be commissioned as a chief warrant officer too. Again, they must successfully complete both candidate school and basic course before they are commissioned to CW2. And again, right now, it was both Special Forces and Air Defense, but right now, we are just going to pilot the Special Forces population.
Well, and I imagine that a lot of that has to do with, you know, you use programs like this to target areas that you really need to target with more creative ideas, but you also don't want to compromise quality.
That's right.
And you know, so you implement it where you can, perhaps. So thanks for updating us on that.
Absolutely.
That's our way to do incentives
Right.
for E7s and E8s. But the Guard has been doing this for a while. And so, but I'm glad that Yolandria brought that up, that they have to complete WOBC before. And Rick took it from all three of us when, because we were all, after that article came out, we were all emailing him and poor guy, but he took it well. And he's like, okay, I got it. And but he has done an amazing job. And I really love him on part of our team too. He has done great.
Yes.
Well, and again, not to sound like a broken record, but there you go. You know, that's the power of collaboration and collaboration across all three compos to make us one magnificent cohort. And I think this is just another example of that. You know, another subject, folks, that has been big, mentoring's always been a key force multiplier in our cohort. It's always been one of our biggest challenges, too, to get after. And it's not only in developing warrant officers throughout their careers, but also identifying potential future members of our ranks. Hoping you all could maybe briefly share your thoughts on the subject of mentoring and its importance.
Sure.
Al, go ahead.
Happy to start. So a couple of years ago, I started giving guidance, you know, right away when I came in the position. Mainly, the thought process was this, is that we can all have a different spin on this, but we all generally can agree that a successful warrant officer is fully successful as a professional if you make sure that certain measures of effectiveness, if you measure yourself and how well you're doing, one of the ways you measure yourself is, are my NCOs trained and ready on their systems? And who am I mentoring to become a future warrant officer? So I've challenged all 3,000 plus assigned in Army Reserve to be that kind of leader and mentor, not just a system expert. And so if you can't tell me who you're mentoring by name and know right off the top of your head without thinking about it too much, that you know that there's somebody you've been working on. And when you do, you're fostering sort of that friendly sense of competition between squad leaders and team leaders to be that one that gets identified and elevated within the unit. And we have to do recruiting in a very decentralized way in Army Reserve, and there's not enough USAREC folks to go around. So we say that every soldier in the component is a recruiter to some degree. And then you follow that up with some of the things that help you pull people in and you inspire them with is examples of superstars like Kenya Rice, this year's MacArthur Leadership Award winner. You know, our property book warrant that's downrange won't even be able to come back to receive the statue, but developed a team by empowering folks who are not there every day, the part-time folks, but giving them something to do, you know, NCOs, so that they have some sense of ownership of the unit. And then when they come together, there's already that unit cohesion because they've already had their piece of it that they've been contributing. And I could go on with many, many examples, but it's just putting those kind of examples in the minds of, and like my boss said here recently, we had a yearly training brief, you know, you need to get into the minds of your 10-level soldiers and let them know, you know, Specialist Griffin, hey, if you could be a general someday, you could be a command sergeant major, you could be a CW5, or you can pad your resume with the great stuff the Army gave you, go out and make a lot of money in industry. If you want to be a warrant officer, this is what you got to do. You know, be a superstar team or squad leader, and my CSM Lombardo says at least 2 years as a squad leader so that you got enough credentials on your NCOER that you can apply and you're well qualified. But you got to know that up front and then plan that out with your unit leadership. And I'm going to put a product together called Warrant Officer 101 to help explain this down to company level, at all levels, so that people know within this component, here's the things you can do and the type of work you can do, and here's some examples of what success looks like.
And just another, you know, example of that old axiom of identifying your replacement.
Oh my goodness.
Someday you're going to want to retire, right?
That's right.
The ongoing, it's as much as things change, some things stay the same. That I don't think has ever changed for the warrant officer cohort. You got to get after it. And
So Lieutenant General Jensen is adamant about making leaders that are caring and positive, and he has stressed that to all of us, and showing that we care at the beginning of trying to recruit, individuals. I went to a recruiting seminar for the Michigan Army National Guard at Camp Grayling, and it was amazing. They had 45 prospects. And I couldn't believe how many of the senior warrant officers, there was W4s, W5s, talking to them and taking the time to let them know, if you have questions about becoming a warrant officer, I am here for you. So the subject matter experts, they actually broke out in groups and they were giving detailed information to the prospects. But there was E2s there, and it's not too early talking to these young soldiers to let them know what it takes to be a warrant officer. Yeah. It's very important to get it early in their careers, and so they understand what their NCOERs need to look like. And so, because some of them don't. I went to a graduation on Sunday and I was the guest speaker. I had a captain come up to me and she's like, "Thank you for being here for my soldier." And I told her it was an honor, and she says, "You're the first unicorn that I've seen." And I'm like, that shouldn't be nowadays. It's like CW5 female, there's lots of us now. And I'm proud to be a warrant officer cohort in our group. And it's important for us to get that message out.
Cool. Yeah. And so at next week's USA WOA meeting, annual meeting, all three of you are going to provide in-depth briefings from your foxholes, including senior leader priorities. Yolandria, I wonder if you would take just a minute or two to lay out what the Chief of Staff of the Army, what his biggest couple of priorities are for our cohort.
So his priorities remain the same. People first philosophy, readiness, modernization, and reform. But I would tell you some of the things that's on the chief's mind right now with everything that's going on. It's sharp incidents, it's suicides, it's racism, and it's extremism. And so with the SMA's initiatives of TIMS, this is my squad, we're trying to get after those things and to decrease them. And something that I have shared over the last couple of weeks is time. Everyone wants time. Every person, they want time. And what do I mean by wanting time? Every person wants someone that they can talk to, someone that will inspire them, someone that will mentor them, and someone that will engage them. If we start giving time, I assure you, we would decrease those things that are heavy on our Chief of Staff of the Army and our other Army senior leaders' mind, time.
Right. Well, thank you for that. And so I think probably we need to close this up at this point. On behalf of our senior warrant officer leaders, I want to thank Brigadier General Hill for taking time out of his busy schedule to speak to us earlier. I also want to thank AUSA President General Carter Ham and the entire AUSA team for continuing to provide warrant officers forums such as this, even as we all struggle with compressed time frames, technical challenges forced on us by this ongoing pandemic, which hopefully isn't long for this world. But please join us at next week's USA WOA 48th Annual Meeting of the Members for 3 afternoons of warrant officer professional development as we welcome such distinguished speakers and panelists as Army Chief of Staff General James C. McConville, the Combined Arms Center Commanding General Lieutenant General James E. Rainey, our Army Talent Management Task Force Director Major General Joseph P. McGee, General Carter Ham, Lieutenant General Patricia McQuistion, and many of our senior warrant officer leaders in addition to you all. If you want to send your questions for any of these distinguished folks in advance, please pop me an email at director@usawoa.org. Thanks for listening, and panel, thanks for making all of us smart.
Thank
All the
you.
way.
Thanks
Well-
for having us.